And hello, everybody. Lovely to have you with us. I'm Dr. Jen Fram. I'm here with Lena Ross. Now, some of you have been subscribed to this podcast for some time will recall that it was Conversations of Change, and it's been having a lovely lie down, a little bit of a nap. For the last couple of years, and we've decided it is time to wake it up and pivot into the space of conversations of agile change. So, Lena and I are the co founders of the Agile Change Leadership Institute. We are a training and development company. We specialize in building confidence and capability for leaders leading change in organizations that are moving so fast and change managers having to change their world in the space of agile change. This podcast, we're going to aim for so for those who are kind of keen to know what's happening, we're going to aim for about 30-minute episodes. We'll be recording them and keeping them on YouTube as well. And we'll tell you a little bit more about who's going to be on it very soon. Enough of me. Lena, introduce yourself to our lovely listeners.
Yes, well, actually, I was pleased. I was one of the guests on your precursor to this, on your Conversations of Change podcast, and that's how we got to know each other a lot better after we both worked at NAB. And then after working on a few successful collaborations together, after publishing our first books, then we decided to launch the Agile Change Leadership Institute, which has been a great experience, a learning and development company, as you said, Jen, with a focus on education and agility, that has spanned now, is it 67 countries? Or yes, we're very proud of that.
Direct impact in 67 countries now, which is just amazing. Yeah.
And we were lucky enough to go to Silicon Valley together as well. Yeah. So that was a great kickoff to the Agile Change Leadership Institute. But that's a little bit about me and how Jen and I love working together in this space of change and learning. Jen, I know that some of those themes about the podcast that we've got coming up are fantastic, and one of them is really about how change is changing. So I might just spend a couple of minutes talking through that and get your thoughts on that as well. But what I've noticed, even just pre-pandemic, but particularly in the last possibly 5 years, is the changes that are taking place with things like, change used to be a really planned thing, and now it's so iterative. And so you've got to be so responsive to demonstrate that agility and adaptivity in the workplace. And in my early days of change, it was very top down. We would plan communications in a cascaded way. And now it's a lot more about co-creation and how do we get two-way communication and invite immediate feedback, like short pulse surveys and things like that to get people involved straight away and get their feedback in the moment, so we can continue with that iteration. And I just remember the days of lots and lots of artifacts just to tick the box, and no excitement around experiments, which is really pretty much the change landscape now, and trying out new things. And a couple of other things I've noticed is the focus on empathy. Now as a lot of change practitioners are using things like empathy maps and think, act, feel maps, and really moving engagement to a much more human-centric approach rather than ticking the box. And the change practitioner to me now is becoming more of an advisor rather than a change manager who just, very delivery focused. There's more an advisory focus. But that's just my perspective and my observation. You've probably seen some things as well that really stick out.
Yeah, I think some of the things that really resonate for me with the concept of change is changing is, to some extent, it's the loneliness of the role. If I think about, and I give the examples in our webinars in 2013, 2014, when I was leading enterprise change program of NPS at NAB, I had a team of 10 people to deliver that change. 3 years later, I went in to do a global Workday implementation with another client. I had a team of 2 people. And then 2 years later, I was the only person doing the enterprise change work. And so I think for a vast and majority of the people who are listening who work in the space of change, they will know that the resourcing has gotten much leaner in terms of the work that we do. And then corresponding with that is that the runways are so much shorter. So without even getting into whether we're doing big A or small A, and we'll have episodes where we'll talk about that, but it's not uncommon now to be handed a change which is going live in 2 to 3 weeks and having to make sure that you can support people through that. And that's kind of normal. And so I think that has really been part of the, the drivers for why we work in this space of agile change, and how we've seen that change practitioners have had to change. And not just the change practitioners, but the leaders, right? The leaders leading their people through the same sort of thing, which can be really challenging. I think one of the things that I'm mindful of, Lena, is one of the questions we ask often our people in webinars is, when was the last time you did something for the first time? And I'm wondering if you want to share the answer to that.
Yes, I know. We do that when we talk about mindset shifts, because it does really push you out of your comfort zone. And this is what we're going to be also seeing with the guests on our podcasts, how they're going to be doing something for the first time as well, which is beautiful. Look, a couple of things, Jen. When I will be hosting these podcasts, this is going to be a first for me. I've not done podcasts before. I've thought about it over and over again many times. So you have been the nudge for me to get going for these with the Agile Change Leadership Institute. So that's a first-timer experience that I'm going to be looking forward to. And the more recent experience I've had for the first time is I've started to play tournament poker. So I've had to learn something new. I've had to feel like the newbie, beginner mindset, asking silly questions, and really feeling vulnerable. And in a way that's been really good, because it's made me stop and think about how I'm feeling and what that experience would be like for people who we're also helping learn and try new things. So it's great to put yourself back in that place of discomfort. Yeah. Hey, what about you?
Yeah. I was actually thinking about it. And the main example I could think of, which is I was trying to think of all the, the clever AI and all that kind of stuff. But the real thing that stood out for me was a couple of weeks ago. One of the things that I do every year is I host a Thanksgiving dinner or gathering. And for those listeners who are outside of Australia, no, Australia doesn't do Thanksgiving. However, whenever it rolls around, I just find it a really nice marker to stop and give thanks to the people in your life. And I really love cooking. This year was the first time I had ever brined a turkey. And this was like a 3-4 day process from the time that you defrost the turkey to you brine it, and, you cook it and you serve it. And far out, I was so nerve-wracked through this experience. And I was thinking about it because I realized in some ways it was like waterfall change, right? Because you had this long list of things to do. The stakes were high. A turkey is a big bird, and it's an expensive bird, and it's a long process. So you actually don't know until you cut it, did it do the job, right? Did we end up where we were meant to do? And I was kind of thinking, if I had been true to my principles, a week beforehand, I just would have got a chicken, and I would have followed the same process so that I got comfortable with what had to happen, and I could, test it and see if it worked fine. And that would have been my MVP. But I did not. And so I had to draw very heavily upon self-compassion during that process to get comfortable with the discomfort of doing something for the first time. It was surprisingly nerve-wracking. For those who are curious, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. So if anybody is looking for a dry brining recipe, Recipe Tin Eats is the place to go, and Nagi will help you with that. So worked perfectly. The
Lena, photos looked amazing too, Jen, so I can testify to that.
Yeah. So Lena, I wonder if I think when we've been putting together guest lists for this podcast, both you and I have backgrounds as boots on the ground change managers, right? We've been in the trenches, we have the scars, we've had the successes, we've had the failures. And so it's been important to us to curate people who have real experience of delivering agility and change in the workplace, whether it is successful or not. And I was wondering, do you want to share a little bit about what we're hoping to hear from our guests?
Yes. So we know the guests because they've they've come, a lot of them have shared experiences with us through learning, either through learning with us or through us, or we've had a shared experience working with them. And what I'm really liking about the themes that are emerging from this is, sometimes I call them, the stories of the courageous, because they're about people experimenting, learning something new, and then being encouraged to experiment or apply it straight away, and then also reflect on the insights of what they learned from that and what parts made them feel uncomfortable, comfortable, what would they do differently. So a little bit of a personal retrospective. And in doing that, they actually share their stories of growth, and they actually share really warm stories of how they're sharing their learnings with their team. Some of them have applied this in a team learning kind of cohort learning approach, and that's been really heartwarming too, where we're hearing stories like, I've done other change courses, but I couldn't really apply any of that, but this one I couldn't wait to race out, and go and try it out. And they're learning really great things like making it safe for themselves. Like, I'm telling my stakeholders I'm just experimenting, so that gives me a softer landing in case it doesn't work out. Okay, so that was an experiment, let's try again. So there's something, and we were talking about doing something for the first time. These people that we're talking to are often doing something for the first time, and the stories that are coming out are so heartwarming and so real, and from the trenches, right? So we love it.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Like, when we first designed the programs that we put out there, I don't think either of us ever considered the transformative elements of it for the people doing it. We were thinking about making sure they've got the skills that they need and the tools that they need and stuff like that. But it transpires that there's actually a really lovely personal transformative experience of doing change, whether they're leading or delivering in a different way. So that's kind of cool. Last thing, one of the things we were wondering about, Lena, was whether listeners had specific questions and whether we do some dedicated brain picker episodes. What's your thinking on that?
I think that's a great idea. In fact, it's funny you say that. I was reflecting on our first Brain Pickers episode, which was December 2016. So we've got a good history with Brain Pickers together. And when we first started Brain Pickers, it was like this. You and I would get together and we would record something and talk about a particular topic that was hot at that time, or some of our listeners would say, hey, can you explore this? And then we got caught up with the book writing and the client work. And I think that is a great idea to ask the people listening to this, have they got anything they'd like us together to unpack? Much like this conversation, our Brain Pickers episodes are very conversational and answering some of the questions that are top of mind for you.
Yeah, and they might just be little short episodes that we put out rather than the longer interviews. So
absolutely, that's a great idea.
To wrap up, listeners, it's lovely to have you back with us. We hope that you're hitting subscribe if you're new to this. We hope that those of you who are subscribers are looking forward to what comes next. We're recording this a couple of days before Christmas in 2023. So it'll be going up straight away. And what we would say to anybody who gets it through on their podcast is we're wishing you a wonderful festive season, and we hope that there's lots of love, laughter, and rest involved.
Happy hope.
Yeah, and other than that, we'll be seeing
and remember self-compassion, hey?
Yeah, lots of self-compassion, right? Over this season, lots of self-compassion. And we will see you in 2024.
We will. We'll look forward to it.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.